Welcome to another episode of Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jaime Agostino. On this show, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today on Financial Minds Meet the Experts, we're talking to Dan Schline, President CEO of the Carolina Credit Union League. Dan, thank you for joining me today. Would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
Well, sure, Jamie, and thanks for having me. It's nice to get the opportunity to sit down and talk. I've been with the league for, it's hard to believe, 25 years now. In April, I celebrated my 25th anniversary. I started with the North Carolina League back in 1997. It was in the middle of the folks that have been in the industry for a while will remember the big HR 1151 battle. And so I previously done some advocacy worked on Capitol Hill and worked on a few different campaigns. And so I didn't know anything about credit unions 25 years ago. And I think like a lot of folks, at least for me, I fell into credit unions and I got here and I just found that for a government relations and political guy, the issues were really interesting. And most importantly, the people were great. And the work that I saw going on was terrific. So it just sort of held me. And I've had some great opportunities over the years to get to know some folks and grow internally in our organization. And then I took over this role, 4 years ago, I think. Time flies. So I've been in this role as president and CEO for about 4 years.
Okay. All right. Well, in your current role, what challenges are you seeing that credit unions are facing there in the Carolinas?
I think that, and I haven't listened to, I saw a John podcast come through, but I haven't listened to it. But my guess is that really the challenges that our credit unions in North and South Carolina are facing aren't fundamentally different than the challenges that credit unions across the country are facing. There are staffing challenges with recruitment and retention. They're trying to figure out, well, how do we make this new world with remote work? There's technology, and that's sort of an ongoing, everybody's thinking about digital transformation and which fintechs do we partner with? How do we use big data? There's credit unions are thinking about crypto. Younger members are interested in that. And then you sort of layer that, all those sort of technology issues, and there's this heightened concern, I think rightly so, about cybersecurity related matters and issues. So, and then there's of course, the never-ending issues with compliance and regulatory burden that our credit unions are facing. But the way that I sort of think about all these challenges, and when I hear our credit unions talk about them, is that these things, all of these things, fintechs, crypto, and recruiting the best folks to work with the credit union, all these things are wrapped around this sort of basic focus and need to grow their credit union. They want to grow membership, they want to grow loans, and to do that, they have to be relevant to their members, to consumers, and so that requires you to sort of grow and adapt with the times. So.
Yeah, absolutely. How is the league helping, the Carolina credit unions overcome some of these obstacles?
That's a great question, and we talk about that all the time. That's a conversation that we've been having for many years, but I've been at the league, and the needs of credit unions have evolved over the years. And one of the things that we talk about internally with our team on a regular basis is that we can't be all things to all credit unions. We can't solve every problem for every credit union. We get a lot of calls every day, every week from credit unions saying, "Can you help us with this? Or can you help us with that?" Sometimes we can provide that support, and sometimes we have to refer them to a partner like Visa or Community Mutual. Or the Carolinas Credit Union Foundation. So we try to be very focused. We have 5 key focus areas of the league. Advocacy for us is job one. Professional development is a key focus. Our risk management work that we do with credit unions. We have a sort of a focus area we call C resources, which is essentially some of the back office support and operational support we're providing for smaller credit unions in particular. And then our 5th focus area is it's really this concept or this idea of creating community. So, when I think about like some of the problems that are the challenges that we talked about at the top of the conversation, and then how the league's helping credit unions overcome some of those. Advocacy obviously is job one for us, as I mentioned. We are always working to make sure that proposals that are put forward that are going to create unnecessary barriers or obstacles to member service, we're pushing back on those. We're pushing back on banker attacks. And we're always trying to find some more proactive ways to help credit unions serve their members. I think maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that later. On the staffing side, we talked about sort of staffing and staff development issues. We're really proud of some of the professional development offerings we have at the league. We have 6 years ago, our team headed up Lauren DeAngelis, who runs our professional development area, as our chief learning officer. We launched a program we call Leadership Development Institute. This year, we'll graduate our 100th graduate. So we have credit unions from across our two states. It's a year-long program. Each class is about 20 to 25 folks. They meet quarterly. And it's really focused on leadership development. That's been a really important component for our credit unions in terms of developing and retaining some of their rising stars. And we sort of couple that leadership development program with our emphasis and our focus on Circus, which is the Southeast Region Key Management School. And that's really about management development, and the Circus program is a bit more operational. So we have this sort of balance between these two programs that are really, we think, are helping our credit unions internally grow their bench and their leadership potential. So those are two things we're proud of. A few years ago, we also introduced Talent Guided, which is an executive coaching program we offer. And we have credit unions across the Carolinas, and we've also partnered with other leagues across the country, and other leagues are accessing our executive coaching or our Talent Guided program. So that's another opportunity we see sort of in that professional development, in helping credit unions address the issue of sort of retaining and growing their staff. And I'll just mention one more item, and that's in terms of how we're helping credit unions address these challenges, and that's on the compliance side. Compliance has been sort of a mainstay for us for years and years. Jean Couchois, who's an attorney, runs that area for us. Jean spent about 10 years at state employees credit unions, so she has this fundamental understanding operationally of what happens at credit unions and this real passion for helping credit unions with compliance. And we're answering, Jean, Allison, and others on our team, we're answering 1,000+ calls and emails from credit unions, mainly small and mid-sized credit unions, with compliance questions. And that's really, day in, day out, that's a really important service for those folks. So, as I said, there's things we can do and there's things we can't do, and we try to be focused. And that's just a sort of a sampling of how we're helping folks.
Yeah. We can relate, at Viso Financial. I mean, we run into the same type of things. I mean, we want to try and help as much as we can, but there are key areas that we're really focused on. And then we have strategic partners like our leagues that then we also funnel credit unions to for assistance. So totally understand, what you're saying there in respect to that. So what other issues are you trying to address specifically with policymakers there in the Carolinas?
Well, there are, I mentioned, I think I've said this 2 or 3 times, advocacy really is job one for us. We have a membership survey we do every year, and we ask our credit unions, what's the number one reason you're a member of the league? And they say the advocacy support. And so we really have to be good at the advocacy work, and we spend a lot of time and attention. And it's some of it's the issues we're working on, and I'll talk about those in a second. But a lot of it is just building relationships with state and federal lawmakers, participating in the election process, raising money, making sure that we have access, and making sure we know the right people and have the right relationships. In terms of sort of the policy development and policy work that we're doing, year in and year out, really for the last 10 years, we have made, or certainly in the last 7 since consolidation between the North and the South Carolina leagues, we've made it a priority to have a proactive legislative agenda at the state level in Columbia and in Raleigh year in and year out. We really think that we have to be there standing in front of lawmakers asking for something, advancing the credit union charter. Sometimes those things are more impactful to credit unions and perhaps more controversial in the eyes of bankers. And sometimes those things are just sort of technical issues this year. For example, in North Carolina, we worked with bankers and others on the remote and electronic notary issue. There was this arcane provision in the North Carolina statute related to not being able to keep a colored copy of a driver's license, which is sort of odd and antiquated. That's something that the banks and the credit unions want to fix. We got that fixed. In South Carolina, there was legislation passed because tow truck drivers were towing and holding vehicles for long periods of time, and credit unions were racking up thousands of dollars in storage fees. So it's some of these things that are happening people don't realize, but those are some of the issues that over the years our credit unions have brought forward and said these are problems for us. Those are like sort of less controversial, more technical, but they're still important to credit unions. On the flip side of that, moving forward in North Carolina, we are working on a complete rewrite of the State Credit Union Act, which hasn't happened in many, many years. And we have been working on the rewrite for about 18 months and pushed that forward during the short session this year. And it was, I think our credit unions are excited about that process, but the banks are not particularly excited. So we anticipate that we'll have some ongoing conversations in the next few months and into the session next year. But that rewrite will be everything from governance to field of membership to parity. And it's something that's, I think, long overdue in North Carolina. On the South Carolina side this year, I would say perhaps the most controversial bill we worked on was there has been some issues in South Carolina with a bank selling its assets to a credit union. We've seen credit unions purchasing banks in other states. It's happening in Florida and Georgia and other places across the country. And there's a prohibition in the South Carolina statute. And we had some legislation introduced that would create an opportunity for a bank to sell its assets to a credit union. And that was another item that wasn't particularly well received by the bankers. So, sometimes we find opportunities to work together and sometimes we butt heads, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is advance credit union agenda. And then real quickly, of course, at the federal level, we have this great working relationship with other leagues in CUNA and working on field of membership and a range of issues there.
Yeah. Right. Well, great. It looks like you have a full plate. You got a lot of things going on just with the advocacy focus there. Overall, what is your vision for the Carolina Credit Union League?
Well, the way that, and when I transitioned into this role, we talked a lot about this internally, and we talked about it with our board. And our vision really is that we want to make sure that credit unions are here to serve consumers for generations to come. And so, as a league, I think what that means for us is that we have to continue to grow and evolve. Just 30 years ago, credit unions needed their league for something completely different than they need us today. So, organizationally, we have one of our core values is think big. And when we talk about think big, we really talk about it as sort of think differently, which is we need to constantly, as an organization, whether as individuals and collectively, recognize that how we did something last year or the year before or yesterday isn't necessarily how we need to do it tomorrow. Because credit unions' needs are changing. The way we think about the services we provide and the value we provide needs to continue to evolve if we want to be relevant to our credit unions. And if we really want to help them grow and serve consumers for generations to come, I think the credit union value proposition is phenomenal. I'm sure you do. Mm-hmm. And so we want to safeguard that value proposition for the next generation of credit union members.
Great, well said. Any final thoughts or comments for our listeners today?
I'll just share one final thought related to, I talked about our areas of focus. And one of the things that I've only This is the only league I've worked at. And so, but one of the things that I sort of notice and see as I visit and get to know folks across the country is how strong the relationship is in the Carolinas between corporate and the foundation and CUNY Mutual. So one of our focus areas is creating community. I think that this idea of, well, first of all, I think that the cooperative principles are a real differentiator for credit unions. I think it's a competitive advantage, and I think one of the cooperative principles is cooperatives working cooperatively. And I think to the extent that the league can foster that sense of community, bring credit unions together, that's really important to our future. I'm excited about that, and I do. I've known David for a long time and value the work that you guys do, and just appreciate the opportunity to talk today.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
And I also want to give a special thanks to Vizzo Financial Summer Tech Con for sponsoring this episode. Vizzo Financial will be showcasing the products and services of Vizzo Financial, MyCU Services, as well as their strategic partners. Join your peers and credit union experts for Summer 2022 TechCon on August 23rd and 24th, where you'll see demonstrations of products like CCUL, investments, payment services, and so much more. In addition, there will be CPE credits awarded for 2 FinTech keynote sessions. There is no fee to attend this virtual event. However, registration is required. Register today at www.vfccu.org. As always, thanks for listening and make it a great day.